Hello everyone, welcome back to another race review video. Today, of course, we will be discussing the 2025 Chinese Grand Prix, won by Oscar Piastri himself, his first win of the 2025 Formula One season. I think the race overall was pretty good, very solid. Not great, but not bad by any means of the imagination. So once again, we'll just go through and discuss the race in chronological order. Firstly, we have to discuss the elephant in the room though of the disqualifications for Leclerc and Gasly for being underweight and for Hamilton for having too much plank wear. The teams should be better than this. I know that most expected a 2-stop, but a 1-stop was executed in most cases, which helped the cars be underweight because there was less tyre weight because they had worn through the tyres more, but their team should still be accounting for this. And Hamilton's, I know it was a sprint weekend, but you need to get the setup right so that you don't get disqualified from the race, because no matter how small the margin is, it's a hard and fast rule for both instances, for both the weight and the plank weight. It's just something you can't go under in both measurements. So hopefully they'll be able to bounce back next week, and hopefully this doesn't happen again for the rest of the season. So firstly, the start. Great start from Oscar Piastri here. Not as good as George Russell. Russell got a really good start and was able to get just alongside Piastri. However, Piastri squeezed Russell, not too far, just enough space towards the inside, and basically forced him to having to back out just because his line into that first corner was so tight. And inevitably, this also helped Lando Norris, which I don't think Oscar was trying to do deliberately, but Norris was then able to sweep around the outside of Russell just because Russell's line into turn one was so pinched and he couldn't carry that much speed through. So a great start from Piastri and from Norris, and a bit unfortunate for Russell because he probably got the best jump out of the top three. We also had that Leclerc and Hamilton contact, which was unfortunate. I don't think you can really pin the blame on any one of the drivers here. Hamilton kind of cuts back a little bit, not his fault though at all, and Leclerc was just trying to stay out the way and mounted the curb, and that flung his car a bit into the path of Hamilton. Hamilton was very lucky not to get a puncture from this, and Leclerc unfortunately got the worst of it with his broken front wing, which didn't seem to hamper his pace too much, but imagine how fast he could have been going if he did have that fully formed end plate on his front wing. The first incident of note, I suppose, was Alonso's mechanical DNF. This was because his rear brakes were overheating too much. Aston Martin thinks there may have been some form of debris that got into the brakes because Lance Stroll didn't suffer with these issues at all, which means it just happened to one car. So there has to be an explanation, which I think it was some form of debris, but we'll never know. Alonso's had 2 DNFs now from the first 2 races, so he'll be looking to bounce back in Japan, and hopefully he can put a full race together, because Lance Stroll's been around his pace, but Alonso's been pretty decent so far in qualifying, so he just needs to get a good race run together. We then had Bortoleto making a big mistake going off into the gravel, I believe it was on the 5th lap. Just a bit of a silly mistake here running near the end of the field. It happens, he's a rookie, these types of mistakes happen, but Bortoleto just needs to look to put together a nice solid weekend, or a nice solid race more specifically, because in Melbourne he had the incident, and once again he's had another spin here, and even though the Sauber wasn't exactly quick, it was definitely the slowest car out there, you still want to be able to put together a full race and not be 40 seconds off the back of the pack straight away. The first round of pit stops then occurred with Russell being able to jump Norris at this stage, as most people pitted in at around lap 15, also trying to put on the hard tyres as most of the top 10 started on the medium tyres, or sorry, mostly everyone started on the medium tyres. Russell was able to get a jump on Norris, but Norris was able to get him back a couple of laps later, showcasing the extra pace that McLaren had over the Mercedes, and it was a great overtake from Norris and a great overtake from Russell on the pit exit too. So overall, really great racing from both of those drivers at this stage. We then move on to the team orders controversy at Ferrari here, which I think was completely blown out of proportion by TV missing the crucial first message by Hamilton, which was him basically initiating the swap, saying he should get out of Charles's way. The entire conversation then follows on from that. That's the premise that you need to know, and the rest of it kind of makes sense. It was just unfortunate circumstances that really came across at times when Ferrari was looking to do a swap. First you had the back marker of Stroll, and then that separated them a bit, and then they started catching Russell ahead as he had to get past Albon, but then after that all came across, Hamilton realized he actually wasn't catching Russell, and then he initiated the swap into turn one, where he thought he would lose the least amount of time, which I think is fair enough. Hamilton at no stage said he would not swap with Leclerc. He just wanted to initiate the swap where he would lose the most time, whilst Ferrari kept trying to do it into the hairpin, I believe at turn 14, which would have cost him a lot of time. So I think I'm siding with Hamilton here. I think he made the right decision. And there was definitely no friction between the teammates or Ferrari here. They were just trying to discuss when the best spot to do it was, and they eventually did get there. And overall, I agree with the team orders in this instance. Leclerc was much quicker than Hamilton was. From this stage on, then the drivers seemed to be adapting to the race and understanding that the one stop was actually going to be better because the tyre wear was much less than it was in the sprint race. This is because the track had rubbered up a lot more cars had been going over it since the sprint race, so the tyre wear was much less. Apart from Hamilton, who decided to go with a two-stop, he was just showing a distinct lack of pace compared to what he was during the sprint race, and unfortunately he was going to get passed by Verstappen, who had really good end of stint pace. So I think they made the right decision in going for the two-stop. He would have got passed by Verstappen on the one-stop anyway, so switching to the two-stop just gave him more strategic options, so I think it was the right decision for Hamilton. But for anyone else, I don't think the two-stop would have really worked, as shown by RB, which performed another massive strategy blunder here, deciding to put both drivers onto a two-stop, which was clearly not the right decision, and RB just continually throws its drivers under the bus here with bad strategy calls, even when the car is showing some sort of pace. We then had some great racing following on from this. Verstappen put a great overtake on Leclerc into turn 1, which was absolutely brilliant. A nice little switchback. He used the extra pace he had on those tyres to maneuver Leclerc into a bad spot and was able to make that overtake stick through turns 1 and 2, which was great racing from Verstappen. He showed great patience and was able to set up that move on Leclerc. And in Leclerc's defense, I think he just ran out of tyres at this stage, which wouldn't have been helped by the fact he was missing that front wing end plate, because it was probably putting more load on that front tyres than it otherwise would have been. We then had that battle between Hadjar and Doohan that went on for basically the final 15 laps of the race at this stage. It was a great battle, apart from Doohan's lockup, which cost him a 10-second time penalty, completely deserved. He missed the corner, but otherwise than that, the battle was great. Doohan was defending really well. Hadjar was trying really aggressively to get past, and it was really entertaining racing to watch, especially as the battle for the lead had kind of died off, and the battle during the top spots had kind of died off at this stage of the race. The final main issue, I suppose, that popped up was Norris having brake issues. And this was just Norris having brake issues. This wasn't a McLaren issue. It wasn't a Norris-caused issue. It was an issue mechanically with the car, which Norris had to overcome. Not specifically with the brake line itself, but McLaren said they had a leak somewhere in the brake system. So they just had to keep trying to manage this, which Norris was doing an extremely good job of, meaning he just had to progressively start lifting off the throttle earlier and earlier and getting on the brake earlier and earlier as the laps went past. I don't think Russell would have got him, because I think McLaren were measuring that gap and slowing down as much as they could without getting overtaken. So if they had a couple more laps, I don't think they would have slowed down as much, but it was very interesting watching Russell closing in on Norris in the final couple laps. Norris reckoned he did have the pace to challenge Piastri. He had saved tyres if not for that brake issue, but we'll never know. Clean air was so prevalent here, so Piastri was probably always in the driver's seat to win this race. But in conclusion, it was a great drive from Oscar Piastri. He put it together very well measured, especially after his Melbourne Grand Prix mistake. Last week, he put together a great race, mistake-free. He executed in qualifying, which is basically what won him the race here, as he was able to lead into turn 1, which really is what mattered, as clean air just meant less tyre wear and put you in a great position. So Piastri's brought himself back into the title fight. I know we shouldn't be talking about the title fight 2 races in, but given his mistake in Melbourne, it would have been very easy for another couple of semi-poor races here, finishing a couple positions behind Norris, and all of a sudden that points gap to Norris is looking at around 50 points or 2 race wins. So he's done well to bring it back over the course of this weekend, and we should be set for a very interesting title fight come the rest of the year. Just some other shout-outs I'd like to touch on. It was a great haul of points for Haas and Williams with the disqualifications. Carlos Sainz gets his first points with Williams because of this. Not the way he would have wanted to earn them, but it's good double points for Williams. I'd expect Sainz to get quicker as the year goes on, and a great job for Haas. They've bounced back extremely well from last week with the issues they were having with their car. I'd say that the car is very track-specific. Melbourne had a lot more high-speed change of direction than China does, which just has more longer corners. So it'll be interesting to see how they go in Japan. They could struggle there, but they made the most of the car when it was better, especially Esteban Ocon put together a great performance. Finally, I have to give a shout out to Lance Stroll, because he's actually scored points in these first 2 races. He's been putting together very stellar drives. Nothing too amazing, but he doesn't need to be amazing. He's just being solid. He's been good, he's keeping it clean, and he's scoring the points, and that's all you can ask. I know it's very easy to be harsh on Lance Stroll, as I have been in the past, but you have to commend him. He's doing exactly what he needs to be doing at the moment. Overall though, I give the Chinese Grand Prix a 7 out of 10, maybe a 6.5 out of 10. It was a very decent race. It was mainly based around tyre wear and tyre strategy, which unfortunately I think it would have been more interesting if it had been a 2-stop, but unfortunately it just turned into that tyre saving 1-stop, which I think kind of detracted from it. And same with Norris getting that brake issue, it would have been interesting to see if he could have challenged Piastri later on in the race. But on the whole, I enjoy the Chinese Grand Prix. I like the circuit. I think it's pretty cool. I'd prefer Malaysia over the Chinese Grand Prix, I think, if I had to pick between the two, but the Chinese Grand Prix is still a very interesting circuit, and I enjoy having it back on the Formula One calendar, especially that banked corner. It really shows the effect of dirty air, and it really shows which cars are able to rotate and get the traction down at that high speed. Let me know though down below what you would rate the race out of 10. Of course, I gave it a 6.5 or a 7, and I'm very excited for the race at Suzuka in a couple weeks' time. Very keen for it. Japan, Suzuka, one of the best tracks on the circuit in terms of actually seeing Formula One cars at their peak. The racing might not be as interesting, but hopefully we'll see some high tyre wear, lots of pit stops, and some interesting strategy, and of course some overtakes. But I'll see you guys in 2 weeks.